Standard 10th, Subject Geography, and lesson number 6, Population. In my previous video, I have already discussed the distribution and density of population in regards to India and Brazil too. And now we are going to discuss the sex ratio of both the countries, for India as well as for Brazil. So in our next slide we are going to observe a figure 6.3 where we can compare the sex ratio of both the countries like India and Brazil. First of all, we should understand what is sex ratio. Sex ratio means the number of females per thousand males in the region. It is evident from the graph that the number of women in Brazil have always been more than men, while in India they have never been more than men at any point of time given here. Now students, try to understand the figure of Brazil. In 1961, about 1010 women were there per thousand men. Whereas to compare the Indian sex ratio was only 940 per thousand male, as we can observe from the figure. So we can conclude that the Indian sex ratio has not been more at any time from 1961 till the census conducted in 2011, and hence we can say that Brazilian women were always more in comparison to Indian women. Now look at this next slide. This is age and sex pyramid. It is again given in comparison to the countries of Brazil and India. Now we will try to understand what this pyramid is for and what is the use of that. So this graph shows the age and sex of population. It is also known as population pyramid, and it is used to study the age and sex related aspects of region's population. Does that mean that we can know the number of percentage of various age groups of males and females in the country? Yes, of course. This helps us to know the proportion of children, youth and old people in our country. This pyramid is, we can see that the number of young people is more in both the countries, but the proportion of children is more in India, while proportion of people in the age group of 80 years and above is more in Brazil. So students, to conclude this, we can say that the young males and females are more in Indian population in comparison to the Brazilian population, where they have the more number of old people in their country. Now let us observe the next slide, that is about population growth rate in both the countries. The graph shows the growth rate of population in Brazil and India, but here the graph line is going down. Why? Correct. Though the line shows the downward trend does not mean the population decreasing. It shows that the growth rate is lesser in the previous decade. Does that mean Brazil's population decreasing? No. This means that the growth rate is less, and looking at the trend in near future, the Brazil's population may decrease. That means the growth rate of population has reduced considerably in Brazil. However, it is not done in India. From 2001 and 11, India's population increased by 18.2 crores. India's population growth rate was higher till 1971. Then the rate stabilized. The rate of population growth is now declining, but the population is still growing. It is observed that the Brazil's population rate growing is declining, and Brazil's population may not increase in next 2 decades. To conclude this, we can understand that both the countries are showing downward trend of grown population, but the India's population is not going to decrease in future, whereas the Brazilian population may decrease or stop growing. Now students, we are going to discuss the life expectancy of both the countries. But what is life expectancy? This means the average number of years a person born in a country is expected to live. This means that we Indians live for 68 years on an average, but Brazilians live for 75 years. So the difference is very clear that life expectancy of India is lesser than the Brazil. As we can compare the life expectancy trend of India with Brazil, in 1960, the Brazil was having 54 years, whereas India has got only 41 years of life expectancy, which has been extended to in 2016 about 68 years, but whereas Brazil has reached of 75 years. So now to conclude this, we can say that the Brazilian life expectancy is far more better than in comparison to the Indian life expectancy growth. Now finally we are going to have the graph of literacy rate of both the countries. Students, you observe this graph carefully. If we look at the Brazilian literacy rate in the year of 1961, it was 72.60%. Whereas in 2016, the Brazil managed to get the literacy rate of 92.60. In comparison, India in 1961 was only 40.80% and could manage to get the figure of 72.20% in 2016. So we can conclude that the Brazilian literacy rate was much higher in comparison to the literacy rate of India, and hence we can say that for literacy in India there is still so much of work has to be done, and hence we have to extend our literacy rate to the 90 plus figure. By this students, we have completed your sixth lesson, population, and therefore we are going to stop here. See you in the next video for the lesson number 7 after your exam soon. Thank you for watching this video.